and welcome to the Weekly Sceptic, episode 78. I'm Nick Dixon here with the friendly face of Zionism, Toby Young. And coming up, George Galloway wins big in Rochdale, Sunak delivers a bizarre speech that everyone hates, and a man goes to jail for naughty stickers, plus peak woke and extra content, of course, for our subscribers on basedmedia.org. But Toby, is there anything you'd like to get off your chest first?
Well, I wanted to tell people that you and I have organised our first Zoom call with silver and gold subscribers for this Thursday at 7 p.m. All silver and gold subscribers should have received an email about that. If you haven't, check your junk email boxes. It'll be in there. And it gives you the URL you need to click on to attend the call. And we've invited silver and gold members to submit their questions to us beforehand, though they can also ask us during the call. But if you want to submit a question to us beforehand that you'd like us to answer on the call, you can do that by emailing either of us at theweeklyskeptic@gmail.com. And if you're already a subscriber, but not yet a silver or gold subscriber, you can upgrade and attend the Zoom call. It's not too late to do that. Just do that before tomorrow, Wednesday night. And if you haven't yet subscribed, then this is another inducement to do so. Become a silver member for as little as £10 a month, and you can attend the first monthly Zoom call with Nick and me this Thursday. That's March the 7th, this Thursday at 7 p.m. But you'd need to join before tomorrow night, Wednesday, in order to be invited, because that's the cutoff for those who want to attend this week's Zoom call.
Yes, I hate to be a party pooper, but I believe it's weeklyskeptic@gmail.com.
No, it's not. No, it is. We've got two.
Oh, we've got two?
But it's
okay,
this
is news to me.
It's the one with the in front of it.
Okay, we've got one without and one with... Oh, that's annoying. Okay, so it's theweeklyskeptic@gmail.com. So ignore me. I don't know anything about my own company.
Yeah.
But do come along at whenever Toby said it was, Thursday at 7 p.m. And it's a very good deal for now, because we basically couldn't come up with a number of tiers. That was supposed to be in a higher tier, but I just said, let's just chuck it in the £10 one, because we gave up trying to think of a more expensive one. So you're getting an incredible deal, because we got bored of trying to come up with too many tiers.
Incredible
deal. Great deals. I've got a cold, so I don't know if actually it should be maybe better at Trump. I've had a cold this week. Many people. Sign up for that. basedmedia.org, and we've even got gold subscribers, so thank you to them. They're the absolute legends. You're all special. People were really annoyed that we had that gold tier, but actually people have subscribed to it. So haters gonna hate.
But thank you to those gold subscribers. It's hugely appreciated.
Yes, absolute legends.
Oh, and Nick, we've got a new show, a new live show scheduled.
Yes,
it's now
April 8th.
April the 8th at the Hippodrome. We haven't yet started advertising that on Eventbrite, but we're going to do so, I think, before the end of this week. So if you go to the events section on basemedia.org, you'll be able to find out more details and purchase a ticket.
Yeah. All right. That's all the promotion out of the way. Sorry, everyone who doesn't enjoy the promotional bit. There'll be people skipping in fury there. They always promote at the start of the show, just angry people getting a free product. But we will crack on with our stories now. So much has happened again. It's one of those weeks, isn't it, in life, in the culture war. So much stuff happens, guys. And we had George Galloway, our old friend George, and he won in Rochdale. And he won quite emphatically, and it was quite an embarrassment. Of course, it was a unique circumstance, because Labour had basically sort of left their own candidate hanging out to dry because he was dodgy. So they couldn't even support their own candidate. Unique circumstances. Starmer's like, we would normally have won, blah, blah, blah. So whereas George was very triumphant. And he said that Starmer and Sunak are two cheeks of the same backside. And hard to argue. I've never done a George before. I think I did quite well there.
Quite good.
It was my first attempt, and it nailed it.
Two cheeks.
The same backside. I despise the Prime Minister. Despise. So he loves it. He just
Zionist shill.
He thinks Israel exists.
A paid puppet of the Zionist entity.
He's like Toby Young. So that's Galloway. Yeah, and he was right, though. They are two cheeks of the same arse. You couldn't really put it better than that. And he said backside. Now he wants Corbyn on board, and there's that picture going around of him, Corbyn, and Tony Benn. He's like, let's get the band back together. Not Tony so much, but let's get Corbyn back. Imagine how weird that would be. They could make a big dent in something.
Yes.
And some on the right are sort of impressed on, my weird side of the right by the way that, he's at least sort of breaking the paradigm of the uniparty and showing how it's done. But I do think also that the right reform do look a bit cringe in comparison to me. They were there whinging about. I mean, it was awful intimidation tactics, but Tice was doing a long post, about the intimidation tactics. But who cares? Who's he appealing to? The regime doesn't care. The regime have proven they don't care about any of that. Especially if it's going to happen to reform, they'll love that. And you think the only time they might care is if one of their own MPs gets murdered, but they still don't care. They just go, "We'll stick 31 million in the budget for security. We'll probably pay for it, taxpayer, and we'll just do that." Though there is some signs they maybe care a little bit because they're now banning hate preachers, I've heard. But that's a whole other topic. But what did you make overall of this Galloway thing? Was it a fluke, Toby? Could it happen in many areas throughout the country? I suddenly went Michelle G there.
Yeah.
Is it important or not?
Yeah, I mean, it's it feels like a one-off because it's a by-election. I mean, if there's another by-election and George Galloway can produce Jeremy Corbyn to stand in that by-election, and the Labour candidate makes some terrible gaffe and ends up being disowned by the Labour Party, then yeah, maybe it could be repeated. But they were fairly unique circumstances, and I don't think it's going to put much of a dent in Labour's vote at the general. In fact, I don't even think George Galloway will hold his seat at the general. It's an opportunity for him to do some grandstanding and pretend he's broken the mold and caused a political earthquake. But I think it's probably a bit of a storm in a teacup, and I don't see how other parties can emulate his tactics. There are in a constituency as dominated by Muslim activists as Rochdale, then maybe. But they did use intimidation tactics to scare off the SDP candidate, the Reform candidate, to stop them speaking at hustings in some circumstances. There seems to be some question mark over the sheer number of postal votes George Galloway received. A suspiciously large number, seemingly, were cast for George Galloway.
They all came from Scotland, weirdly.
Maybe there's nothing to that. Don't want to. I know how litigious Gorgeous George is, so perhaps it's a completely fair result.
Yeah. Someone messaged me, said, "Careful what you say about Galloway because he likes to sue it." It wasn't even you. No. Someone else said that he loves a court case.
Yeah. But I think he's a pretty awful man, and I'm amazed that appearing in a cat suit and licking. Who was it? He licked. It was Dennis Waterman's girlfriend, wasn't it? What was she called again? Anyway,
I didn't know. That's news to me.
This was on Celebrity Big Brother, as I think it was then called. No, I think it was still Celebrity Big Brother. Yeah, I think it was Celebrity Big Brother. Wasn't just Big Brother.
I'll lick anyone if it means we can defeat Israel. Was that what it was about?
No, he didn't even come up with that excuse. No, he was just. I think they were just required to be an animal, and so he put on a cat suit.
Colourful character.
Yeah, and amazingly, that didn't end his political career. But yeah. I don't have I don't have much to say about it. It hasn't already been said by hundreds of other people.
Okay. I thought you might feel stronger, but the one thing I wanted to note was he's quite tough he's, at least in his rhetoric, on grooming gangs. It was quite strange because he's so obviously radically pro-Islam and concerned with Muslims seemingly above everyone else. But he also was like mentioning the grooming gangs. But one thing that was quite interesting and somewhat amusing was that he wrote 2 separate letters to the constituents of Rochdale, and basically one of them was sort of like, "Hey up, pies and that, public services," and it was sort of like very, very, very focused on just Rochdale. I'll just read it anyway. And the other one was a little bit different. So he says, "First and foremost, I believe in Britain. This is why I fought for Brexit, why I fought against Scottish independence. I believe in family." And he goes on, "I'm the father of 6 children. I believe that 5 of them are still at school, and I don't like some of the things they're teaching our children. I believe in men and women. Good." Oh, God, even got God in there. God created everything in pairs. Unlike the mainstream parties, I have no difficulty in defining what a woman is. I'll just give you some of the highlights. I believe in law and order, peaceful change. I fight for small business. And as an owner of the Exchange asked me, "Rochdale is 20 minutes from Manchester. How can you not make that work?" So he says, "Above all else, these are my goals. Reopen the maternity and A&E at Rochdale Infirmary without delay. Make the open-air market the heart of the town, just like Bury. Secure the long-term future of Rochdale AFC. Bring back big names to our town centre like Primark, and finally, make Rochdale great again. I hope I can count on your support. So he's a MAGA Galloway who cares about God and men and women being men and women and small business and football. And then the other one, quite different tone. This one went out as well. This one began, Assalamu alaikum. I was going to say that as a joke, but it actually did. It actually did. That's so funny. The last 130 days have shocked the Ummah to its core. The killing. Oh, God, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not laughing at Muslims, guys. I'm laughing at the cynicism and genius of having two separate layers. The last 130 days have shocked the Ummah to its core. The killing of thousands of our brothers and sisters in Gaza is a war crime, and Israel must be held to account. The political class have failed Rochdale, failed Britain, and failed Gaza. I expect as much for the Conservative Party, but the Labour Party under Sir Keir Starmer has betrayed Muslims, choosing instead to support Israel's genocide in Gaza. He says he's fought for Muslims at home and abroad all my life, paid the price for it. If Labour loses by-election, Starmer could be forced out. Sir Keir Starmer, a top supporter of Israel, out. So he goes on and on. And if he says if God wills it, he does say God in this one, maybe a slightly different God to the other letter. Same sort of God, different name. I'll give 200 remaining days by. But anyway, point is, he goes on. It's a very, very different message. What did you make of that, Toby?
That's pretty low tactics, I think. Worse than Boris's two letters or two articles he wrote, one for and one against leaving the EU. He only published one of them after all. But Galloway's published both of these.
Should have published both. Next level.
But it seems to be the letter aimed at the Muslim voters of Rochdale seemed to be pandering to the conspiracy theory that the Labour Party has been captured by the Zionists, and that's why they've kicked out people like Jeremy Corbyn under the pretext that they're anti-Semites, because of course they support the Palestinian cause. I think it's pretty irresponsible of him to kind of pander to those particular grievances and that particular conspiracy theory. But, of course he's irresponsible. That's how he wins these by-elections.
Well, I know he's litigious. I just want to say he's a great man, and maybe the two letters is a smart. Maybe it works. I mean, it's sort of a pre-internet tactic, really, because we can all see it. But then again, he's still won. Does anyone care? I mean, it has worked. Hey, I mean, and he was. I don't know. I mean, I said it. Galloway's victory just highlights the total failure of the right to advance any authentic idea/agenda. Reform are busy trying to be a slightly less cringe Tory party. Meanwhile, Galloway's slogan is basically IDGAF. Even if you think Galloway is a fluke, the rest still stands. I mean, one thing you can say about him, he's been bold. I mean, you could say that letter's a bit sneaky, but he's been bold about his views, hasn't he? He hasn't. What reform sort of seemed to do to me, and I like reform, but I'm not sure. I've been watching them, and it's a bit like they're just trying to be. They still sort of buy into the system. The big problem the right has, we maybe get into it later, but the right is basically not allowed to exist and hasn't been since World War II. So it's how does the right ever advance an agenda other than toned down, wet one nation stuff? Whereas Galloway is showing that if you just, and Corbyn showed this as well, of course there is a ceiling to it in terms of votes, but if you just come out and say what you think and just completely authentic, there is a market for that.
I would have thought that one of the differences between George Galloway and Reform is that George Galloway is trying to get people to vote for him to protest about the fact that the Labour Party hasn't called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. It's a protest vote, whereas I think Reform is trying to develop into a more fully fledged political party with a proper policy program. So it's a slightly harder. It's a bigger mountain to climb. I mean, if it was just Farage protesting about immigration, standing in one constituency, and the Labour Party candidate in that constituency and the Conservative Party candidate were busted flushes, then maybe he would win too. But if you want to establish your identity as a national political party, it's more difficult. Galloway's only standing in one constituency. Reform, I think, have said they're going to field candidates in every single constituency. So, they can't just pander to one particular group, one particular minority in a constituency to try and garner a protest vote about the Labour Party not sharing their agenda.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I also maintain it's harder because they're on the right, and it's just harder to. You couldn't have a party. equivalent to Galloway's position on the right, it would be they'd all be in prison, as we will maybe see later with this Sam Melia thing. That's my claim. But okay, so if you don't have loads to say on, I think we've probably covered the funniest part, which is the main thing. And let's do Sunak then. And there's a lot to say about the Tories. So this is a kind of general topic, which is the Sunak speech, but also the general continued shitstorm of the Tory party. So Sunak put out this speech, and I wrote a whole article on it because it annoyed me so much. And I put out a post which was kindly reproduced in the Daily Sceptic, and on my Substack, which is now nickdixon.net. By the way, I've got to sort it out. The URL and all that is very boring, but I've done it. nickdixon.net. But basically, the shortened version, maybe I'll try and find it, was he came out and did the speech 5:45 p.m. and you're like, okay, what's this going to be about? It's going to be about this Islamic extremism, but it was just completely off. Maybe I'll just read what I said because I won't be able to improve upon this. I said Sunak's speech was a cowardly, anti-conservative celebration of hyper-liberalism. There was nothing about the wider context of attacks like Manchester Arena or even Sir David Amess. Yet he was happy to extend the scope of his speech when, for example, taking a bizarre pop at the irrelevant Nick Griffin. With embarrassing transparency, every time he mentioned Islamic extremism, he coupled it with the largely imaginary far right. For instance, stating that Islamist extremists and far right groups are spreading a poison. That poison is extremism, an oddly tautologous line that could have benefited from a rewrite. He also made a point of saying, I stand here as our country's first non-white prime minister, leading the most diverse government in our country's history, an emphasis that goes beyond liberalism into pure woke territory. There was anti-conservative sentiment in his downplaying of religious traditions and rejection of the Scrutonian primacy of place. I like that one. As Sunak claimed that it's not the God you believe in or where you were born that will determine your success. And he went on and said, basically, it's your hard work. So he was kind of positing this industrious anywhere man, which I call presumably a managerial manlet in an undersized suit. But anyway, he goes on and says the Christian church was praised, but only for its tolerance, i.e., political liberalism. All in all, a horrible speech that demonstrates everything wrong with the Conservative Party. The chaos of the recent protests and intimidation of MPs had to be addressed, but he could only do it by pandering to the worldview that has created these problems in the first place, whilst invoking standard liberal or even leftist scapegoats due to his fear of focusing plainly on the real issue. So sorry to read all that, but I do better in writing than speaking, because speaking is harder. But I elaborated on it in my full piece and made some more points. But what's your comeback to that, Toby, overall?
Well, I didn't hate his speech as much as you. I thought it could have been better. But I think what he was trying to do was, in some ways, quite brave, because it's so difficult to try and articulate a set of values which we can label British values, but which are inclusive enough not to alienate any of our minority populations. And that's quite difficult to do. And whenever politicians have tried to articulate British values without sounding too bland and anodyne, because of their fears of alienating some populations, it usually falls pretty flat. It usually ends up, as you say, sounding like it needs a rewrite because the language is often so bland and platitudinous. But given those constraints, and given, I think, he felt the need following George Galloway's victory, given the events that had happened in Parliament the week before, MPs increasingly under threat from Islamic extremists, the fact that we have these, to many people, terrifying displays of partisan political activism in our city centres every Saturday, it felt like he needed to say something. He needed to reassure people, to say that, to sound positive about Britain, to try and reverse the idea that has grown up that Britain is broken. It's a divided country. It's divided and sinking. So he needed to try and articulate a positive vision of Britain, which without leaving himself vulnerable to the charge that he was excluding too many groups. That was the kind of comeback to people like Danny Kruger and Miriam Cates at NatCon when they gave their speeches at NatCon. If you talk too much about the family, you're going to alienate single mothers, you're going to alienate the LGBT population. If you do talk too much about our history and heritage, you're going to alienate minority populations and so on and so forth. It was kind of like easy meat for the Labour Party and progressive radicals. Maybe you think Rishi shouldn't worry so much about that, but his strategy of trying to bring on moderates, speak for Middle Britain without antagonising the core Tory vote doesn't seem to be working. As we know, latest poll only on 20%, 27 points behind Labour, only 7 points ahead of Reform. Whatever he's doing, it ain't working. And the speech didn't seem to give him any kind of bounce. Looks like the budget won't give them much bounce either. But I think given the constraints, I don't blame him for trying. And I think he felt like he ought to say something. Maybe he didn't say it as well as he could have done, but I think we have to acknowledge the difficulty of trying to articulate an inclusive vision of contemporary Britain, which is positive and which everyone can sign up to.
Well, okay, interesting. I noticed Alison Pearson completely agreed with me, by the way. Not that that makes me win, but it kind of does. I mean, she says, Nick perfectly echoes my own sentiments here. Having called on the PM in my Wednesday column to make an address to the nation, I think I should have written it as well. Muzak is wholly inadequate at this stage. Well, so she thought it was just, yeah, so bland perhaps. I was really bothered by a few things. I mean, look, one, if you're going to be called the Conservative Party, it has to mean something at some point. This was a textbook um, advancement of liberalism. Now, you're a liberal, so you maybe don't mind, but to me, when you're saying that where you're from doesn't matter, God doesn't matter, it's all about just working hard and just being this globalist guy. I mean, that's such a strange thing for Conservative to say. But perhaps more than that was then he then went beyond liberalism and he suddenly went woke. When he says he was the first non-white prime minister, and he clearly said, and he presiding over the most diverse cabinet, whatever he said, and he's already earlier in the week gone on about diversity in this embarrassing exchange with Starmer. He listed like we had the first, brown lesbian prime minister, and we had the first list and that, and his whole list of, and of course they did, and then Starmer's just there as a white man. Kind of accidentally based at Labour only has like straight white men as leaders. So I got it. But it's, why is the Conservative Party banging on about that? That's wokeness. That's even not even liberalness. So there's a defense of liberalism. Britain's an anywhere place. Anyone can come here. Anyone can do anything. Your God doesn't matter. Where you're from doesn't matter. But also, by the way, it's great that I'm non-white and that we're so diverse a cabinet. So why is that great? Why is that a value in itself? Because if you were truly dedicated to colourblind liberalism, then go all the way with that. Don't go on about being non-white. Don't mention it. Then at least you're playing the game fairly by your own terms. You're being a liberal, colorblind 90s person. Fine, I can live with that. I grew up in that. So just don't mention that you're non-white and that your cabinet's so diverse. Because why do we give a crap about that as conservatives or even as liberals?
Well, I think the context for those remarks was he was trying to dispel the woke caricature of contemporary Britain as a systemically racist country in which black and brown people are treated as second-class citizens and in which the ruling party, the Conservative Party, is systemically Islamophobic. He's trying to say, no, Britain is one of the least racist countries in the world, and to prove it, here I am, a non-white man, and I'm the Prime Minister. The reason I think he was stressing that it's not where you're from that counts, but what contribution you make, how hard you work, is he didn't want it to sound as though the Conservative Party is an anti-migrant party. It doesn't matter if you can't trace your lineage back several generations. Doesn't matter if you weren't born here. You can still be British and you can still embrace British values. And we're a country that welcomes all comers, provided they work hard and contribute. I think it was an attempt to kind of rebut the kind of dominant woke anti-colonialist, anti-racist kind of grievance-mongering narrative. That's not a wholly reprehensible thing to try to do. Maybe he shouldn't have sounded quite so defensive. It was as if, he feared that the caricature of the Conservative Party as a kind of party for kind of white racist men had landed, and they needed to do something. But maybe that's not the reason people are
Does anyone
not
think
voting
that still? I
Conservative.
mean, it's just it's the most diverse woke left party of all time. I mean, but here I haven't even hit you with my main point yet, though,
Okay.
which everyone agreed on, which was the just the just the mentioning of far right every time he mentioned Islamism. It was absolutely pathetic. I mean, the worst things. I mean, he did it from the start, but here's one. He said, "Islamic extremists and far right groups are spreading a poison. That poison is extremism." I called it tautologist because he said extremist twice. But the point is, it's absurd. I mean, the far right, they may become a thing if we keep on going towards wokeness and so on. But there is the far right, as we've seen from the stats, the 40 odd thousand people on the terror watch list, and 90% of them are Islamic extremists, which
Mm,
amounts to almost 39,000. So it's like,
mm.
what are you talking about? And everyone knows that's bollocks, but he can only say it, he has to say it because he can't just be targeting Islam
Yeah.
or Muslims.
Well, I think, yeah, I was thinking about this earlier today because, as you know, I think you made a glancing reference to this. The Conservative Party is about to publish some guidance in which a definition of extremism is going to be offered up, and people who meet that definition will be excluded from serving on panels, on quangos as advisors to the Metropolitan Police. They won't be invited to come and speak at Whitehall departments. They won't be given taxpayers' money. So that these extremists, so defined, in a way we don't quite know what it's going to be yet, but it's about to be published. They won't be legally. It won't legally prohibit people from espousing extremist points of view, but it will mean that they don't get the benefit of engaging with the state. They won't. They'll be excluded from participating in public life in that sense. And so, how do they come up with a kind of this definition of extremism, which they want people to buy into, and which won't sound like they're just engaging in the culture war? Well, they have to try and sound even-handed. They have to try and come up with a definition which is politically neutral. It can't feel partisan, or it won't work. That's why they use words like extremism, and that's why when they talk about Islamic extremists, they have to, or feel they have to, talk about the far right in the same breath, even though they probably know, you and I certainly know, that the threat posed by far right extremists is minuscule compared to the threat posed by Islamic extremists. The number of terrorist plots foiled by the security services by Islamists is obviously far greater than the number of terrorist plots by far right political activists. But in order to come up with a politically neutral definition of extremism, in order to find something we can all unite behind in objecting to, you have, I think, to kind of you can't just talk about Islamic extremism, because then it sounds like you make it too easy then for groups like the Muslim Council of Britain, for people like Sadiq Khan and George Galloway, to cast the state as institutionally Islamophobic. It's coming up with these prohibitions on what are essentially expressions of Muslimness. It's another example of the systemic Islamophobia of the Conservative Party and the government it's running. So you can see why they're struggling, why they're trying to come up with a more neutral sounding, even-handed, impartial definition of extremism if they're going to get any political buy-in to this guidance they're about to publish. I mean,
Hmm.
it may be doomed to failure, and it may be that they're trying to, thread a needle which is impossible to thread. And
Well,
I think in maybe you'd like them just to say, from now on, Islamic extremists are going to be banned from protesting, but if far right extremists want to protest, that's fine. But that's never gonna fly politically, and it's not going to help the Conservatives win back any support, I don't think.
there's a time and place for everything, but this was not the time. I mean, you didn't need to mention the far right. Why was this speech now? It was because Islamic extremists have threatened MPs, and now they're finally scared. So that's the issue. So you come out and say we need to stop that. It's nothing to do with the far right. So
Well, I think it was, but the speech was
I
it
understand
was
your
partly
logic.
it was
They're
pitch
softening us
rolling.
up for this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was rolling the pitch for what will be some, I think, probably some new police powers unveiled in the next few days, probably,
Yeah.
and this new guidance on extremism, though that may be delayed because seemingly there's a cabinet split about it. I mean, the definition that I think Michael Gove's department has come up with is, if you subscribe to an ideology which seeks to deprive others of their rights and their free speech, then that's extremist, and those people should be excluded from participating in public life. But then the risk is, well, does that include the Catholic Church, who are opposed to gay marriage, for instance? Does that include gender critical feminists who don't want trans women to bathe in the women's area at Hampstead Pond? Are they trying to deprive trans people of their rights? So there's a big kind of schism apparently in the cabinet about this, and they're still working on the language.
Well, it's good insight in terms of the machinations of politics and the fact they're trying to get this new guidance through or bill or whatever it is. But I'm still right in that it's not working for them to try and be all things to all people, to try and phrase it in these terms, because no one likes Sunak and no one likes the Tories, and they're going to be absolutely obliterated, as we can maybe get onto. But so it's not working in that sense. Well, maybe that's not the goal, and they don't care about that. They seem to want to go for 0 seats, as people are pointing out. But and lastly on the speech, I'll just say the idea of the Christian Church in it as well. I mean, he wasn't wrong. They have become just a political organisation, the Church of England, but the idea that the Church of England is just some sort of bureaucracy to kind of welcome in other faiths was so odd. He said the Christian Church. He said, all underpinned by the tolerance of our established Christian Church. After listing all these other faiths, it's quite a weird vision to me of the church. He listed all these different faiths and said it's all underpinned by the tolerance of the Christian Church. So the Christian Church is there to kind of tolerate every faith except its own. Weirdly, that's what it's there for. I mean, it's hard to argue with that. That's how they're behaving. What about the wider context of how the Tories are failing? I mean, look at Alicia Kearns, absolutely absurd, going on about conversion therapy and this ridiculous bit where she shouted at the Alba guy for not including the T. You're saying that T's aren't people, and it was just the most pathetic. Like, this is a conservative MP who's just so just animated by the fate of the T's versus the LGBs. I mean, I thought we'd entered hell already. Hell is just alleged conservative just discussing the alphabet, the blooming rainbow alphabet for eternity. Did you see that?
I did see it. There's a good news story here, Nick, which has been buried, I think, beneath all the discussion that Alicia Kearns' outburst has provoked. That outburst occurred at the second reading of uh, Lloyd Russell Moyle's conversion therapy bill. He brought forward a private member's bill to ban conversion therapy, and it had its second reading in the Commons last Friday. And a group of MPs opposed to banning conversion therapy for reasons we probably discussed before, because what everybody understands by conversion therapy is already illegal. So what is it they want to ban? They want to ban conversations between parents and health professionals and gender confused children to try and make them pause and reflect before embarking on an irreversible medical pathway. And they want to launch yet another attack on established religions. That's what they want to ban. So a group of Conservative MPs and some other MPs, including this Alba MP who was attacked by Alicia Kearns, decided to talk out this second reading of the private members bill. If they could talk for long enough, that would mean that it would be very unlikely to come back to ever see the light of day again. Now, Russell Moyle and his allies, like Alicia Kearns, the tactic they had to adopt to try and stop it being talked out was to get the MPs to vote for what's called a closure motion, which stops the debate. It means it can be debated again at another time. But to get a closure motion, they needed at least 100 votes, and they couldn't muster 100 votes. So, in fact, what that showed was that the people opposed to banning conversion therapy, the people on our side in this particular battle, are more committed and were prepared to stay in the House of Commons and talk it out, more committed than those who supposedly care so deeply about these abhorrent conversion practices, people like Alicia Kearns and Russell Moyle. they couldn't actually muster 100 votes on their side because it was a Friday, because most MPs like to go home, on Thursdays. So, for all their bluster about being so passionate and caring so much about these poor, beleaguered LGBTQ people who are being subjected to these horrific practices, in fact, they're not. There's very little evidence that it's happening at all. All the evidence that their side has mustered that it's happening is historic and not contemporary. But for all their professing to care so deeply about this, they couldn't actually be fagged to turn up in the House of Commons on Friday to vote for a closure motion and prevent the second reading of this bill being, essentially captured by those who were willing to turn up to talk it out, which is what happened.
Right. Interesting. See, these are the insights we don't get anywhere else. I wouldn't have known that. But I was more focused on the absurdity of an alleged conservative. I mean, there was one part where she said it was trans people who stood with gay people at Stonewall. She made it sound like Helm's Deep. It was like a battle. They stood with them. It didn't even absolute nonsense. And then she had this other thing where she said, She talked about conversion therapy. And given what you just said, this sounds unrealistic. But she said, I've worked tirelessly to secure a ban. What a weird thing for conservatives to be doing, to be banning, young people, as we've said, just question, not just being immediately given puberty blockers because they had a thought which was put into their heads by a debased culture. But what a strange thing to work tirelessly on as a conservative. It's absolutely mental. And no wonder they're getting absolutely spanked. And there was an Ipsos poll that came out confirming this. Though before we get to that, I might just quickly ask you what you thought about your favourite, Kemi. And I like Kemi, and she's very smart and she seems pretty cool. But what was she doing with this mosque post? So she's over there. She says the highlight of my trip was a visit to the Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque, one of the largest in the world. It is a spectacular building. The architecture and design takes inspiration from all over the globe, emphasizing a welcoming and profound message of peace and tolerance. And it's her in a kind of headscarf. And I was like, it was a bit of I, for one, welcome our new Islamist overlords. It was a bit like what my assumption was she's on holiday. Her mate has tried to wound her up and told her that Islam's already taken over the UK. And she's quickly thought, oh shit, I better put something together before I get back in the country because they might hate me. See? So she's stuck on a headscarf and just to cover her own ass. Another idea was it's cheaper than paying for security when she realizes every MP is going to need security. She's like, oh, I better quickly say religion of peace and chuck on a headscarf. Some people were disappointed in this, Toby, that because Kemi, not that we hate Muslims, but it seemed a bit of a kind of rolling over to I don't know. What do you?
Yeah, I think I see it in the context of trying to secure trade deals between Muslim majority countries and the UK to help the British economy. So I think it's forgivable in that context. That's a good excuse.
Extremely forgiving and optimistic from Toby as always. I have a feeling like a lot of the viewers will be or listeners will be with me just because they tend to be, because I tend to take the more base stance. But I mean, you defended Sunak, you defended Kemi. You know what they're going to be saying in the comments, Toby, that you want your seat in the Lords, and they're going to be saying that it's all controlled opposition, and you're I mean, do you still want your seat in the Lords?
I would feel a bit. I honestly don't think that's ever going to happen, but I would feel a bit churlish being mean about Kemi wearing a headscarf and going to a mosque because it is the fourth anniversary of the Free Speech Union this evening. And Kemi, although she can't be there, has sent a very nice note.
Okay.
My favourite line is, and I'm going to read this out in my speech, but here's a sneak preview, Nick. I remember when some sniggered at the need for an organisation defending something so obvious as a person's right to free speech. No one is laughing now. So that's a good line from Kemi. I'm going to read that out later.
Well, good thing she's not going to be there because I've just dissed her, and I might still go. I mean, I'm getting over my cold, so I might be able to go. And you know what? That's my thing, though. I don't need to be at the dinner parties. I'm like, that's the danger of someone like me. Is they kind of like Bannon's always saying they're worried about their dinner parties, party of Davos. These people all see each other. They all know each other. I'm like, I don't need to go to any parties. I mean, I might go, but I don't need to. I can just live. Just a dangerous loner figure. Whereas you've got a lot of friends, Toby, and contacts. I don't mind alienating all these people, so I'll just say it as it is. Just a truth-telling kind of loner hero
something
figure.
that, James Delingpole would sometimes attack me for being too clubbable, for not wanting to alienate my powerful friends. But my counter argument was always, if you want to get things done, if you want to actually bring about changes, you need powerful allies, or you're not going to get anywhere. It's all very well to be, an authentic conservative in your bedsit, railing at the world and not compromising, not forming alliances, not trying to build coalitions, because you're not about trying to improve the world, make things better. You're about, you know, advertising just how authentic and uncompromising and how true your vision is. But if you want to make a positive difference, sometimes you have to be a bit more pragmatic.
Well, firstly, I'm not in a bed sit. I've got 2 bedrooms, nice view. I've got 2 bathrooms. I've got 2 showers. In one of them, I'm a pragmatist. Over the other one, I'm an ideologue. I can do both. I've got so much space now. But yeah. I mean, look. I mean, we'd never. This is an ancient philosophical argument we're never going to solve now. But I've just done this brilliant episode of The Current Thing with Academic Agent and talks about elite theory. If you're going to follow elite theory, the theory of people like Gaetano Mosca and Vilfredo Pareto, well, they would say something similar to what you said, but a little bit they would say something similar to what you said, but they'd say a new elite has to take over. So we actually need it, and you could do it. We need a counter elite. We discussed in that podcast whether it could be Elon Musk and his allies, Peter Thiel and even Tucker Carlson. They could be a realistic counter elite, which could happen. So you are right in a sense, but where you're wrong is that if you're just promoting liberalism anyway, or you're just sort of capitulating to Islam in a kind of Michelle Welbeck submission s kind of way anyway, then what's the point? I mean, I agree you've got to be pragmatic, but what you want is basically we want people with our ideas to take over, although we don't have the same ideas anyway, so that would look different. But I suppose you're closer to taking over with a counter elite than I am. I mean, you could be part of the Musk elite in some strange way.
Yeah, I guess the challenge is, can you make the necessary accommodations to bring about meaningful political change without sacrificing your kind of core principles along the way? That's the kind of tightrope that the most successful politicians tread, like Margaret Thatcher. But it's extremely difficult, and I don't think there's much value in just constantly complaining about the compromises and accommodations people supposedly on our side make. I mean, people accuse me of being a sellout. The other day, I was listening to someone who was actually urging people to join the Free Speech Union. He said, I know a lot of people think that Toby Young's controlled opposition, and I want to park that question. Like, he wouldn't even say that I wasn't controlled opposition. He's like, he's allowing that possibility, but still, so you should still join the FSU, even if you think he is. It was incredible. But yeah, I think it's Teddy Roosevelt's man in the arena. Part of the price you pay for being in the arena is that people accuse you of selling out, and maybe that's useful. Maybe that in some cases keeps you honest, but for the most part, it's not terribly helpful and not terribly realistic.
But there's also the fact that power just changes people anyway. You just become the thing. I can't remember the Lenin quote. There's a really good Lenin quote on it where he just sort of adapts his language to say, "Well, I embody the party anyway," or the I can't remember what he says exactly. Someone will be able to tell me, but it's a quote meaning basically you have all these ideas, and he gets in and goes, "Well, actually, I should take absolute power because I embody these ideas anyway." So that's really what happens. People just get into power, and then they behave like people in power. The only hope for me is that enough of the ideas that resonate more with me survive that process. That's why I want Trump to be a dictator. I want the Trump dictatorship. I want now. All I think is, you look at the way they abuse. Sorry to interrupt, but look at the way they abuse their side, or they act as people in power act, and they want to completely crush us. Maybe we'll talk about Sam Melia soon, in prison for stickers. Not that necessarily he's us, but you know what I mean. They want to crush anyone. They want their side to do what it wants. The other side can't do anything. That's what they want, but that's what we need to do. We might be a bit different because you're more liberal than I am, but we need to get in and just behave like that. Anyway, what were you going to say?
I was going to say that a really good test case is Javier Milei, because he's pretty uncompromising. I think only this week he said that government documents should no longer use non-gendered language. So that was cultural Marxism.
Yeah,
And I think he's scrapped the anti-discrimination department. He hasn't introduced
afuera.
dollarization, which he said he'd do. So maybe there's a degree of compromise there. But certainly his rhetoric is still very uncompromising, and it'll be interesting to see whether he'll succeed. Or whether in the end he just won't be able to bring enough people with him to bring about the changes he wants to bring about. In some ways, it's easier to be a kind of conservative pureblood in Argentina because things had reached such a pretty pass. The economy was such a basket case. They were clearly spending money they didn't have. They'd extracted whatever money they could from the population through taxation. Inflation was out of control. So once things had reached such a terrible state, then there's probably more willingness to try really radical solutions. We haven't quite reached that stage here, but maybe we will quite soon.
Yeah, we could with Labour, and then that could be the time. No, you're absolutely right, and that was really bold what he did there. And some libertarians like, oh, this is not good. It's like, no, that's not going to work anymore. Libertarianism is not going to work. You get in, you crush your enemies, you get rid of all their stuff. Prison for desiccating our war memorials, men and women, all that gender stuff banned. I'd just be like banning everything, deporting everyone, death penalty back. Oh, it'd be amazing. But you can't play these games. You can't play these games anymore. Anyway, that's a bigger thing. I need to stop getting carried away with my fantasies, at least until I've got them worked out in a manifesto. But so I think we've covered most of that. I mean, we had a difference there on you were more generous as always. But the only other thing I saw was that the One Nation side allegedly have the whip hand in the party. So imagine that the Tories have learnt nothing. Or you might say I'm wrong because you might say the Miriam Cates Kruger side can't gain enough support. But basically, despite everything, the One Nation side still have the whip hand in the party. And there's this Ipsos poll that puts the Tories on the 20 points down. I heard that they'd end up potentially with 25 seats in this poll, and it put them at the lowest since the 1978, I think it was. So they're absolutely getting spanked still. So it's whatever they're doing isn't working, and yet the One Nation people are still sort of going, no, we've got this. I mean, it's going to have to fracture, isn't it? The party, surely.
Well, it's hard to see the party holding together if they really do suffer a catastrophic defeat at the next election, which is looking increasingly likely, judging from the polls. But yeah, you're right that things haven't reached such a point in the Conservative Party that they're prepared to kind of abandon their kind of moderate centrist strategy and just lean into the culture war. And it looks as though the budget tomorrow, as we speak, is going to be very much from the One Nation wing rather than the more conservative parts of the parliamentary party. So far, the two big kind of takeaways, sneak previews of what's going to happen. So we had Jeremy Hunt explaining he's not going to make any cut to income tax. He doesn't sound like he's going to increase the thresholds at which you start paying the higher rate. All he's going to do is cut national insurance again. So it was cut in November, or at least a cut was flagged then, and it looks like he's going to double what was flagged in November. And that will supposedly benefit the average taxpayer to the tune of about £400, something like that. But it seems like very, small potatoes. It's not a radical budget. It's not going to throw much red meat to Conservatives fighting to hold their seats in red wall constituencies. And one thing that really annoyed me and many Conservatives is that on one of the Sunday shows, when Jeremy Hunt was doing the rounds explaining why he couldn't talk about what was going to be in the budget, the usual pointless show before a budget, he said that he would love to be like Nigel Lawson. Nigel Lawson was this great radical tax-cutting chancellor, Margaret Thatcher's chancellor, one of the architects of Thatcherism and of Britain's extraordinary economic boom in the 1980s. But he can't, because it's not the right time. He's going to have to be more prudent. He's going to have to be more like Gordon Brown. I was like, you're supposed to be a conservative chancellor. Why are you saying you're going to be more like the Labour chancellor who put up the top rate of income tax, who, he described Gordon Brown as prudent. Gordon Brown sold 50% of our gold reserves at the bottom of the market. He was very far from being prudent. Um, and, it just seemed extraordinary that here he was singing the praises of probably the most socialist chancellor we've had in the post-war period and criticizing one of the few genuinely Tory councillors we've had and saying he was going to be more like the Labour one than he was the Conservative one. The other really annoying thing about what's supposedly going to be in this budget is that they're going to chip away at non-dom status. It's like for years the Conservatives have been saying to Labour, who've been saying you have to scrap non-dom status. No, the super rich who benefit from non-dom status are incredibly mobile, and we tax them on their income in the UK. They pay tens of thousands of pounds to have non-dom status. All it means is that they're not taxed on their overseas earnings whilst resident in the UK. If you tax them on their overseas earnings as well, not only will they'll move away. They'll move to Rome, say, which is offering a much better non-dom perks than the UK will be if you scrap non-dom status. And that means that we won't get the money they pay to enjoy non-dom status, so we won't get the tax receipts from their UK earnings either. It is net negative from a tax point of view. It's pure spite. There's no other reason to do it other than to just soak the rich out of spite. And yet, and the Conservatives have, I thought, pretty persuasively made that argument every time Labour says we're going to scrap non-dom status. But now apparently they're going to scrap non-dom status. It's like, well, what about the future? What argument will you possibly be able to make when Labour say we're going to tax the rich even more? You won't be able to say, well, if you do that, it's going to lower the total tax take because the rich are quite mobile and they'll just go elsewhere or they'll work out how to avoid this tax. They won't be able to make that argument anymore because they've effectively acknowledged now that argument's balls. Because if it doesn't work against scrapping non-dom status, it doesn't work against any more taxes on the rich. It's incredibly short-sighted, a complete reversal of everything sensible they've said about why we should have non-dom status. Why do something that is going to be tax negative just out of spite? What, to steal the Labour Party's thunder? I'm sure Keir Starmer is terrified now. And it's just really, Jeremy Hunt, he's a Lib Dem. He shouldn't be in the Conservative Party.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you're not just realizing that now, but yeah, I'm glad you're so animated about the budget. I missed it completely, maybe because I've had a cold, maybe because I only care about radical ideas and economics is my weak point, or maybe I'm just too damn young. Charlotte Gill wrote here, I'm 35 and feel like the budget doesn't affect me. The government basically behaves as if millennials and Gen Z don't exist and aren't real adults. Something in that. Younger-ish generations have been repeatedly screwed by housing and many other things. But yeah, I'm not even followed it. I guess I'll follow it next week once it comes out. Maybe we'll talk about it again next week.
Just one last point on this, Nick. So Cheryl Jacobs wrote an excellent column about the budget in the Telegraph this morning, in which she said that the Office of Budget Responsibility is calling the tune here. The OBR has said that the government doesn't have the headroom to introduce any proper tax cuts. They'd be inflationary and various other reasons why we can't do it. Having kind of criticised Liz Truss for not pandering enough to the OBR, not forewarning the OBR about the mini budget, which supposedly crashed the market, which of course it didn't, but that's the narrative. Having kind of relied on the probity and wisdom of the OBR to discredit Liz Truss, get rid of her, and install himself in her place, Rishi cannot now kind of not do the bidding of the OBR. So, it's another example of a group of unelected officials essentially calling the shots and dictating what it is our elected political representatives can do. Just probably the most disappointing thing about the last 14 years has been the failure of the successive Conservative prime ministers to do anything to claw back all the power that Blair and his successor transferred from elected officials to unelected officials. Even with Brexit and supposedly taking back control, that leaking away of parliamentary sovereignty has just continued unabated, and it'll get worse. It'll accelerate under Keir Starmer. And this is just another perfect illustration of that. It's not the Chancellor, it's not the elected government that are devising this budget. It's the OBR.
Hmm. Yeah, of course, the OBR were going to have more influence after they ousted Truss. As she said, they got me, Steve. The deep state got me. So she said, I don't know why I made it sound like Keir Starmer, but they are both wooden. I noticed, by the way, after I attacked Sunak very brutally in my piece on his speech, Liz Truss followed me on X. Just putting that out there. Interesting timing. But she probably has people for that kind of thing. You just reminded me of another thing that the Tories very much carried on from Blair, which was Ofcom. And we didn't actually put it in our running order today, but maybe we should have. But maybe just very quickly, maybe I'll mention in that context that Ofcom came out with this ruling about the Fox Wotton thing. Misogynistic comments on Dan Wotton Tonight broke offence rules. An Ofcom investigation today concluded that an episode of Dan Wotton Tonight on GB News broke broadcasting rules designed to protect viewers from offensive content. Just got me thinking about that phrase, protect viewers. It's such a strange phrase, unless you're talking about children with the watershed, which at least has a logic to it. As if I'm not constantly offended as well, like this idea of offence. I'm constantly offended by the fact that the BBC, Channel 4, Sky all hate me for my sex, gender doesn't really exist, but my sex, race, sexuality. They all hate me automatically. I'm an evil white man. I'm offended constantly. Where's my Ofcom? But it's just this Blairite ideology posing as impartial. And Cameron talked about reducing its power, but he never did. And it's because he loves Blair, and they're all on the same team. And you also had another bit of information on that on the X. You were correcting me on something.
I don't know what that's a reference to. I was just going to talk
Didn't
about
you?
Ofcom.
Didn't you just add a little thing? Yeah, on Ofcom. Yeah, you said that. I said, why did Cameron lie to voters and allow the Blair Project Ofcom to continue to grow? I said it's because he's Team Blair. You just added some more context.
Oh no, I said yeah. It's not because Cameron talked about the bonfire of the Quangos. This is something he was going to do when if he won the general election in 2010, and he didn't quite win it, and maybe that's a partial excuse. But the reason I think that he didn't really set fire to any Quangos at all, maybe 2 or 3, and the reason no serious reform of Ofcom took place, or any serious reduction of Ofcom's powers, is not because he lacked the will to do it, not because he was a Blairite and didn't want to do it. It's because under Blair and Brown, powers were transferred from Parliament to the Quangocracy, to Quangocrats, and that's proved very difficult to reverse. I mean, once you've given them power, then there isn't much you can do to take it back, because they've got the power. Parliament can only give away power once. It's quite difficult for it to then take it back. It's giving it away. It doesn't have the power to take it back, and that I think is what's going on there. Really, it's not that Cameron was too Blairite to actually want to set fire to any of the Quangos and was secretly, an admirer of the Quangocracy. It's just he lacked the power to do much about it, particularly in a coalition government, having to, have his wings clipped constantly by Nick Clegg.
Yeah, I've heard that argument. But Blair, he did call himself the heir to Blair, allegedly, at that dinner. He had the A-list with his obsession with diversity. We've all seen Peter Hitchens. We haven't all seen it, but he's got his documentary, at the top, where Cameron abandons all conservative principles. They don't get him anywhere. And he just becomes a total lefty. Some even go further. I think that was always his agenda. There's a series. I might find a load of. I've got a load of Cameron screenshots on this, but maybe tell me if there's anything else on that. But I just wanted to. I claim that Cameron is actually. He's basically a lefty. He's a complete continuation of Blair. You're sort of talking as if he just sort of, was the Lib Dems, as if the Lib Dems forced him in. Well, I don't buy that personally.
I think, I think the main reason not much was done to reverse the kind of Blair Brown dilution of parliamentary sovereignty is because it's really difficult to reverse. It's a ratchet. Just on Ofcom, I had a conversation at GB News yesterday. I was on Jacob Rees-Mogg's show with somebody else in the green room talking about, well, why have Ofcom done this? They haven't actually fined GB News. The only punishment is going to be that, executives are going to have to go into Ofcom's offices and get a wrist slap. What's the point? But my worry is that if enough of these complaints are upheld against GB News, it'll be easier for Ofcom to withdraw GB News's broadcasting license in due course, and they'll be able to show a pattern of breaching the broadcasting code, and that'll give them the pretext they need to withdraw its broadcast license. So I think that may be why they keep upholding these very petty complaints. And even though they're not actually fining GB News or punishing them in any way, maybe it's building up to a larger punishment.
Yeah, and why are they so obsessed with punishing GB News, Toby? You're trying to say they're not impartial?
Well, I think I don't trust Ofcom to impartially uphold the broadcasting code, and I don't trust them to be the enforcers of the various new codes contained in the Online Safety Act. I think they definitely do suffer from a left liberal bias.
Yeah, I wish I had more of my Cameron material ready, but I think Cameron was super woke. I think he's a big part of the problem. Speaking of Ofcom and broadcasting issues, Talk TV has gone online. Maybe we'll talk about that in the paid section. But really, we're running out of time. We're going to have to do peak woke soon because we can't, because people get annoyed if we don't do peak woke in the free section. But we've also got Sam Melia, but we don't have time for all of them. And Toby's got to go, as people a fan of me saying, and I've got to go. But we'll do peak woke in a minute. But I think we should quickly hear a quick word from our old friend Thor. And Thor's clients have written his advert today. And Kelvin says Thor is a force for good. So if you need some clarity in your life, in business, or in your professional role, get in touch with him to find some positive traction and momentum. He asked for nothing in return for a recent hour-long discovery session, but added real clarity. He sussed me out straight away, delivering challenging questions, which resulted in an honest perspective on where, but most importantly, what I want to be. And Dan says, Thor helped me fight through one of my biggest fears, public speaking. Turned my phobia into confidence. My speech went amazingly. People laughed at my jokes. They asked loads of questions. I was even invited to speak at another event. Thank you, Thor. And Cheryl says, Thor is like Marmite. Love it or hate it. Honest, authentic, funny, clever, and just super talented. We have laughed and cried, and he is amazing at what he does. I feel fortunate to have him in my corner. I hate Marmite, but bloody love this man. So to set up a free discovery call with Thor, get in touch via WhatsApp on 07906 321 593 or linkedin.com/in/Thor Holt, where you can also read more reviews. So that is linkedin.com/in/Thor Holt or 07906 321 593. Thank you very much, Thor. Do you want to quickly read our other advert, Toby, while we're here? Just chuck it in there.
So this is an ad for the Live-In Care Company. Are you worried about parents or a loved one who are finding it more and more difficult to take care of themselves, or who may be living with a condition such as dementia or Parkinson's? Are you starting to think about a residential care home, but the very thought doesn't sit right? At the Live-In Care Company, we truly believe that home is the best place to receive care from an expert carer of your choice and on a one-to-one basis. Home is always a calmer, more healthy, and a happier place to be. For more information about live-in care, please go to thelivincarecompany.co.uk. That's all one word, thelivincarecompany.co.uk. Or you can ring us for a no-obligation conversation on 0118 914 5300. That's 0118 514, sorry, 0118 914 5300. And we'll be happy to help.
All right, thank you very much to all our sponsors. Now it's time for everyone's favourite section. It is, of course, Peak Woke. So, we've got so many Peak Wokes this week, we had to get into it quite quickly because we've just got too many in a way. First one was really a big story, this West End play that tells white theatregoers they aren't welcome as it hosts an all-black audience night. And this was Kit Harington, a Kit Harington production. That wasn't the actual guy's name, was it? It was something, Jeremy something, wasn't it? I should have checked that first. But this guy comes in and says, we're going to have an all-black night. And what was really notable when he went on the radio talking about it was he was saying that he was talking about, he said our country for a second, so he slipped up, and then he said all our countries, because the fact is he was American. And I noticed whenever he spoke about it, he spoke with this kind of American, what I would call American colonial attitude of importing their racial problems onto our country. He spoke about Jim Crow. He spoke about our country. It's like, bro, you're not in America now. And the ironic thing, Toby, is that he should be deported for creating problems in our country, though he'd probably just blooming love that. It would be the most segregated thing, and it would prove all his points.
Yeah, it was. I'm not sure I understand this concept. He called it, we need to radically invite. I think that's what he called it. I think that was the
Yes. Jeremy O.
weird,
Harris, by the way, is his name.
weird bit of woke speak I wasn't familiar with, to radically invite people, and radically inviting black people to come and see slave play. What that means in reality, radically invite, is code for um, exclude white people from attending.
Yes.
Um, so
He's got the radical bit.
Yeah, it was just straight out and out racism, wasn't it? Pretty shocking, and pretty shocking that a West End theatre would have allowed this playwright and his producer to have come up with this particular wheeze. I mean, I can't imagine it's actually lawful if a white person tries to buy a ticket on the night to which black people have been radically invited, i.e., white people aren't welcome. If the theatre refuses to sell a white theatregoer a ticket because they're white, I'm sure that would be a breach of the Equality Act. You can't do that any more than a theatre could legally refuse to sell a ticket to someone because they were black, or because they were Muslim or disabled. That kind of discrimination is thankfully unlawful, and it doesn't just because you're discriminating against white people doesn't make it lawful. And the theatre producer and the playwright must know this. So what are they up to? Well, it's just a publicity stunt, isn't it? They've said it in order to attract some publicity to their play, but I can't imagine it's very good publicity because 95%, if not more, of the people who go to the theatre are white. So if they've now been sent a clear message that they're not welcome at this play, I mean, maybe it's only on a couple of nights, but is that crystal clear in all this? I would have thought that the takeaway that most white theatregoers will take from this welter of, let's face it, pretty bad publicity will be that they're not welcome at this particular play. And maybe that means they won't shell out up to £200 to spend their entire evening at this particular play. I hope that white theatregoers will boycott the play and send a message to the producers that if you don't want us to go to your play, then maybe it's not a very good idea to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds putting it on in the West End, because you're not going to attract a very large audience.
Yeah, well, Matt Goodwin had quite a good take. He said, I think we should have whites-only schools and restaurants in Britain where white people are free from the gaze of black people. I'm like, base, that's, a good idea, Matt. And then he goes, or maybe that would be racist, divisive, and utterly ridiculous. I was like, oh no, I agreed too soon. I thought he was making a different point. So, yeah, I mean, some would say freedom of association. Maybe you should have that. But yeah, the reason he used, of course, gaze is that it was that black people wanted to be free from the white gaze.
Well,
I'm personally sick of the white gaze as well, but I also mean something else.
But that was part of the rhetoric, wasn't it? Kind of justifying this kind of horribly racist publicity stunt, which this idea that black theatregoers can only feel really safe if they're in an entirely black audience. It's like if there are white people in the audience, they won't feel safe. And it's like, what? I mean, that is just so ridiculous on so many levels. But it's also incredibly patronizing to black theatregoers. To say that they're so fragile, they're so paranoid. They've been their psyches are still so horribly twisted by their ancestral links to slavery, that seeing a white face in the audience of a theatre in the West End will make them feel unsafe. I mean, it's just total balls, isn't it?
Yeah. And there's so many we could go to related to this, Toby. You've got Rule Britannia, you've got C of E. Which one would you like to go to next? We've got too many, really.
Well, should we quickly go to Rule Britannia?
Yeah.
Thangham Debonair, the Shadow Secretary of State for Culture, Labour frontbencher, was interviewed by Katie Balls on, I think, a podcast series called Women with Balls that appears on The Spectator. And she said, amongst other things, that she could understand why some people find the lyrics of Rule Britannia alienating. And she thought there should be a proper debate about whether to sing Rule Britannia at the forthcoming last night of the proms. And this comes up every year now. It's a hardy perennial. I mean, I've now rehearsed this argument so many times, but Rule Britannia is a celebration of the Royal Navy and its supremacy for hundreds of years over the seven seas, and it makes the point that it's thanks to the Royal Navy that we are still free. The Royal Navy has protected us from various would-be enslavers, whether the Spanish, the French, the Germans, but people who criticise Rule Britannia for celebrating English colonialism and the Royal Navy's part in the British Empire's conquests of low-income countries, the developing world, whatever, overlook the fact that actually the Royal Navy didn't just fight to preserve our freedoms. It fought to preserve everyone's freedoms. It wasn't just Britain that would have suffered had the Nazis won the Second World War, or had Napoleon been victorious at the Battle of Trafalgar, or had the Spanish invaded Britain. The entire world would have suffered. But in addition, the Royal Navy established the West Africa Squadron in 1807, shortly after we'd voted in Parliament to abolish slavery, and freed, during the course of its 59-year existence, over 150,000 slaves. So we actually expended blood and treasure on our armed forces in order to free slaves. It wasn't just about preserving our freedoms, it was about preserving everyone's freedoms, and that's what the song's about. It's a celebration of the Royal Navy's role in defending freedom for the entire world. So the idea that it's racist and colonialist and alienates minorities is for the birds.
I know we never get credit for that, and we never get credit for the fact that we were slaves, and obviously white people have been slaves, and the word slave coming from Slav and all this. But hey, yeah, and I noticed you debated Amy Nicole Turner. I can't remember. Sorry, Amy, I can't remember what you're going by. Is it Nicole Turner she's going by now because she got married, or is it Turner she prefers? Anyway, sorry if I got it wrong, Amy. But it was because we love Amy. She's a nice person, but always has mad views. And I just thought it was so funny that you're actually on the right of a debate front. You must be so sick of this podcast always being on the lib side. And then with Amy, you were like just able to completely school her. I noticed she kept getting the lyrics wrong, and she didn't seem to know it was Britons. And then at one point you said Britons, and you put the emphasis on it. I was thinking, you've deliberately emphasized, like, maybe you didn't, because she kept getting the lyrics wrong. It's Britons never, never, never shall be saved, but she got it wrong about 3 times.
Right.
But you schooled her.
I liked her very much. It's the first time I've debated her.
Oh, she's very nice.
Yeah. But elsewhere in the same interview, Nick, you won't believe this, or perhaps you will. Thangan Debonair, having dissed Rule Britannia, which is our national anthem at one remove, having said it was perfectly understandable that this black cellist, who also played the cello at Harry and Meghan's wedding, would feel uncomfortable having to play along to Rule Britannia. Totally understandable, she said. I can understand why many people find the lyrics of that song alienating. We really should debate about whether it should ever be sung again in the Royal Albert Hall. Having said all this, she then accused the Conservatives of fighting culture wars more often than they're fighting for culture. And then she lauded the BBC as a great provider of joy and jobs. And it was like, I mean, how can she get away with that? On the one hand,
stoking divisive culture wars.
Stoking divisive culture wars. Yeah. The national anthem needs to be, Rule Britannia. We need to shelve that. It's too alienating. It's colonialist. We need to decolonise the last night of the proms. But it's the Tories that are fighting the culture wars. I mean,
yeah,
where do they get off, these people? The shamelessness of it, Nick. The shamelessness.
I know. You've just cut someone's penis off. You still got it in your hand. you're saying, in the other hand, you're denouncing rule Britannia. Meanwhile, you're like, can we stop fighting divisive culture wars? It's like, what are you're fighting the culture war constantly. I know it's one of the most annoying gaslighting tactics, but it's meant to annoy and demoralize us, so we can't buy into it, Toby. We just have to plow on, step
We have to
over it,
plow on.
carry
Yeah.
on with our mission.
We have to be
Which is
bigger than them, Nick.
yeah. Well, not bigger. We just have to destroy them in every way. Anyway, we have slightly different views, but we could go on and on. So I don't know how many we want. So there's so many we could do this week. We've got so many Pete Wokes. There's the Church of England. Well, they hired something like 11 people as a part of this absurd. What is it called? Deconstructing whiteness officer. This is what the church does now, by the way, guys. In case anyone thought it was in any way still a kind of anything to do with Christianity, I think we've firmly established it's all about diversity. I don't have it in front of me, so but it was 11. They hired a whole team of people to deconstruct whiteness because they're completely racist. They're always calling themselves racist, aren't they? Which is a weird thing they like doing. There was that bizarre situation where Calvin Robinson had to keep telling them they're not racist, and they kept insisting, "No, I think you'll find we are quite racist." And then it's like, okay, well, fine, you're racist then. It's the weirdest thing. But anyway, I don't have it in front of me. They hired a deconstructing whiteness officer. I thought you had the details on that
Yeah,
one.
no, they've advertised for a deconstructing whiteness officer, and it's part of their and this £36,000 a year old part of their new 11-person racial justice unit, which is being set up by the Diocese of Birmingham and will work across the Midlands, it completely buys into the kind of demonization of whiteness that we've encountered before in critical race theory, and which for some reason the Church of England's gone all in on. Will, whose wife is a Church of England vicar, wrote a really good, quite strident commentary about this beneath the worth reading in full story in the Daily Sceptic. I'll read you some of it. Not a day seems to go by at the moment without a story about the Church of England outdoing itself with outrageous wokery, each instance more extreme and ridiculous than the last. First, we had the parish race action plans, then the deconstructing whiteness officer. How does the church signaling it has hundreds of millions of pounds to give away to shameless race grifters encourage churchgoers to hand over their hard-earned money? If it can raise 900 million from wealthy donors to splurge on race baiting, people will ask, why doesn't it do more to help struggling parishes who can't afford to fix the roof or pay the vicar? When will they realise it's a con? Slavery was abolished nearly 200 years ago, thanks mainly to Great Britain, including many Anglican churchgoers, such as William Wilberforce. None of the beneficiaries of this obscene new largesse will have been slaves, and none of those being fleeced were slave owners. As 2021's Sewell report showed, any extant disparities between blacks and whites in Britain, and in fact those disparities only exist for certain black communities, have no connection to historic slavery. Why would they? It ended centuries ago. Why should well-off black people, many of whom may be descendants of slavers as the trade was prevalent across Africa, be given preferential treatment over poor people from other ethnic groups? Why should race be used to discriminate between people at all? One would hope the church should know better than this. The Church of England appears to have allowed itself to become captured by race baiters who are happy for the institution's finances and reputation to be shredded to advance a divisive, evidence-free agenda of racial discord that just happens to shower cash on them and their associates. It's tragic, really, to see a once respected institution being fleeced in broad daylight. Church leaders need to realize when they're being had and tell the scammers to take a hike. In truth, one suspects this is only the start of the shakedown.
Nice. That was
Pretty
Will's
robust
wife.
Stuff. That was Will. That was Will Jones, the editor of the Daily Sceptic.
I was going to say,
his wife is a Church of England vicar. No, I don't think he was speaking
from Will.
Very based from Will. Yeah.
Okay, I got confused for a second. But all right, here's one for you. If that one's done, North Yorkshire Police apologised to the LGBTQ plus. Is that enough letters for you, Alicia Kearns? Community. And they said, today we apologise for any historical discriminatory behaviour that any members of the LGBTQ plus community were subjected to by any member of the force. And this was an absolutely brutally ratioed tweet that got 123 likes, 1.8 thousand replies, and it got 572,000 views. So I mean, they're doing it just to demoralise us at this point. But this was in response to a request from Peter Tatchell. Why is it the police's job to respond to the most far-left activists possible? Isn't that completely insane? And they said, yeah, we want to draw a line under extreme persecution of LGBT plus people. And And this guy was like, I'm a bisexual man myself, and I understand the blah blah. I was like, what is this doing? I mean, meanwhile, turning a blind eye to people who hate gay people who are running amok on our streets at the moment. It might be said controversially. What do you think, Toby?
Yeah, no, that was that West Yorkshire Police, Nick?
North Yorkshire.
North Yorkshire, because
West are totally based. It's only the
no,
imagine
the West are even less based than the North, I think, because there was an embarrassment for the West Yorkshire Police, which I think we intended to include in the base department last week, but forgot. Which
the
is
lesbian
that,
nana.
yeah, you'll recall that a few months ago, a 16-year-old autistic girl described a police officer, a WPC, who'd come to her house to interview her about something, as looking like her lesbian nana. And as a result, she was arrested and held in the cells for 20 hours. And West Yorkshire Police have finally apologised for arresting her, and hopefully she's going to get some compensation. I should say that the Free Speech Union wrote a stiff letter. I wrote a stiff letter to the Chief Constable of West Yorkshire Police, so I hope that may have played a small role in helping them do the right thing. I've got another one here, Nick, which is North Face. I don't know if you saw this, but North Face, the manufacturer of wildly overpriced jackets, needless to say, produced in third world sweatshops, are offering 20% off if their customers complete a, quote, digital course in racial inclusion. And as part of the course, customers are told that white privilege grants access to the outdoors and that others, black and brown people, are excluded from going out into the countryside wearing their smart North Face jackets because of racism. I mean, one of the ironies of this, which I pointed out on Twitter, is that if North Face are saying to their customers, if you do this course on racial inclusion and you endure a lecture about how hiking and mountains are racist, we'll give you 20% off. They're effectively acknowledging that their customers are white. I mean, if their customers were black, they wouldn't need to be lectured about white privilege. They're basically acknowledging that all their customers are white, and yet they're lecturing their customers about racism. If the only people that are buying North Face's products are white, are privileged white people, then maybe they should look at the beam in their own eye. It's the company that's got a problem with racism, not the company's customers. It's just absurd, isn't it? And, it's so typical of these woke corporations. They spend so much time virtue signaling, convinced it's going to boost sales, but so little time doing anything genuinely virtuous. I mean, if they wanted to help people of color, why not pay their poor, exploited, minimum wage employees in low-income countries where this tat is produced a little bit more money? How about that? How about that as a way of helping black and brown people enjoy a bit more leisure time in the countryside and some of your wildly overpriced products, rather than just getting your already privileged white customers who can afford this tat to take courses in racial inclusion, as if that's going to make the slightest difference to anybody. I mean, I really hope they go bankrupt as a consequence of this. I mean, let's hope they hire Dylan Mulvaney as a North Face brand ambassador and reap the whirlwind, Nick.
I mean, if they go bust, what's every white man outside of London going to wear? I mean, every middle-aged white man after past 35 outside of London is going to be screwed. Yeah, they got in trouble before for having like a drag queen in their advert, didn't they? As if there's any, like in the countryside, as if you've ever seen a drag queen in the country. And then there's all these constant campaigns about the countryside is racist. Drag queens and black people don't like the countryside, and that's fine. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Inequality,
Jews don't like the countryside either. It's not because
there
the
you go.
countryside's anti-Semitic.
Right, certain trees are, but yeah, I mean, imagine that you just walk past an anti-Semitic tree, it just whispers something about the Holocaust. The point is, it's like a racist ent. Anyway, the point is, Toby, inequality is freedom. We don't have to have everyone doing all the exact same things. It's absolutely pathetic and ridiculous. White men like wearing fleeces and going around in the rain with a stick, maybe, and a cagoule potentially over their fleece, depending, layering up. It's all about the layers, my dad says. That's what they like doing. Then they have a little flask, maybe they got a thermos, maybe they got some corned beef if they're really, really on it. Maybe they got some Kendall mint cake. Black people don't like any of that. Drag queens don't like any of that. As you said, Jewish people, apparently, according to you, don't like any of that. So what's wrong with that? They're more urban, fine, whatever. I mean, I'm from the lakes. I don't live there now, but I'll go back there one day, of course, when
Do you
when
think
it
that
all kicks off.
this
Just
is
get my
North
shotgun,
Face? I,
tin food.
I'll come with you. Bit of walk up shooting. Love that. But do you think that this is North Face basically acknowledging that all its customers are middle-aged white men and saying there's nothing we can do about that? That's who our customers are. But at least we can make amends by encouraging them to educate themselves about white privilege in return for a 20% discount. We've given up on trying to appeal to black people. We know they're not going to buy our products. We tried selling to them. We can't do it. It's
They're
just
just too
impossible.
stylish. Can you imagine ever? We've
They
tried selling
just
to black people.
they just
They're
don't they
too
just don't
stylish.
they just don't have the taste. They don't have the taste. They prefer a gaudy tat like the stuff that Donald Trump is trying to sell them.
Yeah,
But
the
no,
idea of Trump. What a golden fleece that could work, and that gets into sort of confusing territory when you say the phrase golden fleece. But anyway, I'm not the one saying it could work. I'm saying if you follow Trump's cynical marketing, which has completely worked, by the way. All right. Well, that's a North Face. How about this one for you? BBC upholds complaint against Today presenter Justin Webb for using the phrase trans women, in other words, males, on air. See, Toby, you're always getting in trouble for this, whichever way around you do it. But Justin, well, you're getting in trouble normally because you accidentally say that they're not men, but he's in trouble for saying they are. Well, he's in trouble for saying they are men because it's the BBC, and you're not allowed to tell the truth on the BBC. There was some complicated reasoning for it, which was to do with impartiality. In relation to impartiality, the ECU considered it could only be understood by listeners as meaning that trans women remain male without qualification as to gender or biological sex, and that even if unintentional, it gave the impression of endorsing one viewpoint in a highly controversial area. It therefore upheld this aspect of the complaint. So that's such a weird decision because that suggests that there are always different views on this subject, guys, which of course there are, but one view is completely wrong and not factual. So the BBC should be factual. It shouldn't be just like, oh, well, you think giraffes can fly and I don't. It's like, no, there's one correct fact. Anyway.
I know, yeah, but and it's and that's they don't require BBC programs to be even-handed when it comes to discussing climate change. They regard the science as settled on that question, but apparently the science isn't settled on the issue about whether the difference between men and women is chromosomal.
ECU is the executive complaints unit, by the way, because I found myself wondering then. I was like, what's the ECU? It's one of BBC's many nonsense branches. Anyway,
so I got one more for you. I think we could have devoted the whole show to peak woke this week, which suggests we're going to have to rename it as not yet peak woke because it's only going to get worse. Even peaker woke, perhaps. But anyway, an academic visiting the British Museum to see its new exhibit, which is about the Roman legion. So it's an exhibit devoted to Roman legions and legionaries. And this visiting research fellow at King's College London, a woman, you never would have guessed that, would you, Nick? Dr. Claire Millington, she's denounced this exhibition for its unrelenting fascist imagery and sexism. Apparently, it doesn't depict women in the Roman legions, even though there weren't actually any women in any of the Roman legions. It's sexist because all the Roman legionaries, all the waxworks, as it were, are men. And another academic agreed with her. And another academic, this one, Dr. Robin Douglas, lots of people kind of piled onto her for being so ridiculous as to describe this as sexist and fascistic when it's about the Roman legions. He said he defended her, and he said he thought that he complained about the exhibition's militaristic framing. How do you put on an exhibition about the Roman legion and not make it militaristic? I mean, how do you not make it sexist? How do you not make it fascistic? I mean, it's just bonkers, isn't it?
They were notoriously militaristic, the Roman legion. And it's the problem is we don't know anymore, Toby, who fought when because of woke casting. So we have no idea. And we also have no idea when it was genuine. I was trying to watch Napoleon, that awful Ridley Scott film. And then there was some people who were black in it. I found myself going, I was like, right, it's woke casting. I thought, hang on, maybe that's actually worse a bit. I didn't know anymore. I was like, I don't even know anymore who was who. You know what I mean? Maybe Napoleon was a woman, a black female lesbian. I don't even know when I'm watching it. Well, I have to go and check. I'm like, maybe I'm just racist now. Maybe this guy was a black guy. There was
I
one black general, wasn't there?
I read a really good piece, I kind of earlier today from someone who'd interviewed a lot of employees at Google. It's about what a complete basket case Google is, and how it's now just completely captured by the HR department, which is kind of baseline woke crazy. And he said that the way in which the unbelievable catastrophic launch of Gemini AI has the reading of what went wrong in the company. And it's incidentally, it's wiped $70 billion off the market value of Google. It's been such a disaster, and everyone else regards it as a disaster because it's erased white people from history. As you said, it makes Napoleon black. The Pope is a black woman. The founding fathers are Native Americans, etc. And it's been widely and rightly ridiculed for that. But in the company, the only thing that they think went wrong is that when people asked them to show images of Nazis, they showed people of color. because
Yes, yes. That's when the New York Times complained.
Yeah. That from the point of view of the kind of internal postmortem amongst the unbelievably beyond imagining captured Google in their postmortem of what went wrong. It's like, we made the Nazis black. Didn't matter that they made the founding fathers Native Americans, the Pope a black woman. All of that was totally fine. That was all planned for. That was exactly how they wanted it to go. But because they erased white people from the past entirely, when they asked people to show, when people asked to see villains from the past, they too were people of color, and that's terrible. That apparently has upset some people of color, so they need to go back to the drawing board now because of that.
Because that was the limit. I think I did allude to that briefly in the paid section last week, but yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is, Toby, it makes you more racist. I mean, more racist. I probably should just say it makes you racist. It makes you even more racist, right? Because there was Dumas, the Creole general in revolutionary France, but I'm watching Napoleon, and I'm just like, what if I'm just watching an NBA movie one day about the NBA basketball? I'm just like, oh, this is ridiculous woke casting. I just turn it off. It's making me racist because now I just assume that things are woke casting. But what if they're actually accurate? There's no way to know anymore. So I'm lost. And as you point out, Google AI is not helping. Shall I do one more Pete Woke? I've got one more. There's kind of a Pete Woke. It's just funny. Sam Smith was walking down the runway at Vivienne Westwood's show, looking ludicrous in a sort of bizarre kind of. He was carrying a sort of stick that looked like he just pulled it off a racist tree in the countryside, and he had a sort of tartan nappy of some sort and weird things draped over him. He looked kind of. People were saying he looks very Lord of the Rings, and someone replied and called him Gandalf the They, which I thought was the best. The best possible is like Gandalf the They. That's not going to be top. I mean, that guy has crushed the internet with that. It's got 19 million views on it. So Sam Smith has gone full Lord of the Rings chic. I don't know what's going on. Did you see that?
Wasn't it sort of? It looked more like kind of Rob Roy than Gandalf. That was the kind of look. It was like a Scottish Highlander, from I don't know the 12th century.
A sort of trans activist Braveheart. They will take our lives, but they'll never take our puberty blockers. Something like
that. It was he looks. I mean, he always looks so terrible, doesn't he? He's got those incredibly. I mean, I don't want to fat shame him, but he's got these unbelievably fat thighs. It's like almost the extent. I mean, how many packets of crisps, how many portions of chips do you have to eat to get thighs like that? I mean, they are incredible. I mean, you could fit one of my thighs into his thighs like 10 times over. They look like like sausages, like pumped with kind of rice pudding or something. I mean, they're just bizarre.
There's a sort of Sam Smith meme where you can sort of choose your Sam Smith, and it goes back to like 2014 or something. And there's actually like he's quite chic and he's slim and stylish, and he just goes and he just evolves and evolves until it's just this bizarre, as you say, sort of strange.
I mean,
Rob Roy blog.
Isn't it a bit odd though that if he wants people to accept him as a woman, and if he wants
it's a they, I think.
But if he wants people to take at face value this idea that he thinks he's sort of more at home as a they than as a him, why is he worked so hard to make himself so physically disgusting. It's like the more he evolves away from being a man, the more absolutely revolting and repulsive he becomes. It's like it's not a great advertisement for kind of sexual, fluidity or gender fluidity. It's like, no, I would have thought anyone looking at you and thinking this is what theys look like, they're going to run a mile from ever becoming a they. It's going to make them even more uncomfortable with their gender dysphoria. If they think, crikey, the only option is to become like Sam Smith. Maybe I'm being too cruel. Maybe he's got some
he's a beautiful
kind of
person.
metabolic problem.
He's on a journey. I think, there was one about it. He looked like a bloke on a stag do as well. I can't remember that one. That was a really good one. Another very funny tweet. So there was a picture of him sort of looking a bit like a builder. He basically looks like a builder, but he's like a they. So it's quite confusing.
Yeah, like a builder who really hasn't taken care of himself. I mean, not like a Polish builder, like a kind of an unemployed British builder in Rochdale. From Central Casting, who spends all his dole money in the pub guzzling lager and it exists on a diet of crisps and chocolate.
No, you're right. He doesn't look like one of those builders who's actually out there working, shirt off. They're the most ripped people out there. He's like the older builder who's now doing an administrative role. You go into the little trailer thing and you get something off him. He has to give you some sort of license or some keys or something, and he just sits there all day reading the Daily Star. Are these stereotypes?
Doesn't look up for at least 2 minutes after you've walked in and you're standing there in front of him. There's no one else in the room. Yeah,
exactly. That's Sam Smith. But then weirdly, he talks to you about puberty blockers and his new pronouns. He's like, I didn't see that coming. Didn't know that was in there.
He said, we get him to look up from the Daily Star. He said, excuse me, sir, excuse me. And at that point, he looks up and said, sir, you're calling me sir, you bigot.
Yeah. Fucking they, innit? Oh, they now. Is he not here? Yeah, I'm back. That's misgendering, mate. Get out. Get off this site. You're done. That's it. And you lose your job.
Yeah. You can't have a license. F off.
He batters you. He smacks you because you've misgendered him. Bang. Yeah. Got to watch out for these very well built theys. Yeah. Because they're strong. He can still do it. He's not as slim as he was back in the early days, but he's still got that muscle you build up over years. So be careful. I think Sam Smith's going to probably lamp you, Toby.
It was Vivian Westwood,
wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you would have thought that's just hiring Sam Smith to model your clothes is a one-way ticket to bankruptcy. I mean,
let's see. So is that all our peak works, Toby? Because we've done now another epic show. It's supposed to be a short show, but it's like it's a massive show.
That's enough peak works.
It's ridiculous. And now we're going to do stuff for the paid people, and we've got to go to the FSU. It's all confusing.
I think people will probably pay not to listen to a show of this length, not pay to listen to even more.
I know. We'll have to work on that. We'll have to think. We'll have to put all the rubbish stuff in the free one and think of really good stuff.
I know. We've given them all the gold now. All the gold up front, Nick. We're like Gordon Brown. We've given away the gold. Anyway.
It's tricky. We're working on it. We're working on other shows as well. FYI, TBC, TMI. All right. Well, thank you for listening, everyone. Weekly Sceptic Live is April 8th. The Zoom call for some people is Thursday, 7 p.m. You can support Nick at buymeacoffee.com/Nick Dixon and nickdixon.net now, which is all my Substack articles. And you can listen to my brilliant new episode of The Current Thing on all platforms with Academic Agent. I don't know why I put myself in the third person, but I've gone full Trump. Support Nick. And you can support Toby by whatever you want to plug, Toby.
Well, I was going to say, if you're not yet a subscriber, not only will you get to listen to the premium part of this podcast, which is coming up if you subscribe. But if you subscribe for just £10 a month, it's £5 a month is the cheapest tier. But for £10, which is unbelievably cheap, you can have a free Zoom call with Nick and me this Thursday at 7 p.m. And if you sign up before tomorrow, Wednesday, you can be included in that Zoom call. Or if you're already a £5 a month subscriber and you want to participate in the Zoom, upgrade, become a £10 a month subscriber, and you can participate. But again, you'll have to do that before Wednesday, and you can ask us anything. You can ask me how much money has been funneled into my bank account by the Zionist entity, and I will give you an honest answer, which is zero. But
don't give me now. They've got to pay for the answer. But yeah, you can ask him about the House of Lords, why he's controlled Oppo.
Yeah.
Loads of stuff. Yeah, basedmedia.org, guys. And we've got an alarming number of subscribers, given, the product's fairly
It's
minimal
going
so
pretty
far.
well. So thank you to all those
Thanks for
who've
the
already
love.
subscribed, about to listen to the premium bit of the podcast. If you haven't subscribed, what are you waiting for? It's unbelievably cheap. Support Nick and me, and there'll be other things that you'll get in due course for your subscription. More premium content, more stuff behind the paywall. I think we're going to put, incidentally, Nick, I think one of the things we're going to do is when we've answered all these tough questions from our silver and gold subscribers, we're then a week later or so, we're going to put a recording of that Zoom call on the site, which is just available for premium subscribers. So even if you are a £5 a month subscriber, you'll be able to see that in due course. So if you can't afford to become a silver or gold member, that's another reason to become a £5 a month subscriber. You'll be able to watch me and Nick candidly asking what will no doubt be extremely embarrassing, difficult questions on Thursday night.
It's a good idea. It's a little worrying because I thought the Zoom calls for me to sort of let loose and say crazy stuff. But I suppose it'll still be behind a paywall, so maybe that'll be okay. All right. So basemedia.org, guys. Thanks for all your support so far. We're doing our best, and the show's going to get even better production value soon. I say even better as if they're really good, but it's going to all sorts of things are going to happen. So stick with us at basemedia.org, and thank you so much to all the free listeners as well. You're still, very valuable, just not quite as valuable. And until next week, stay skeptical.
Stay skeptical.